Today's talk is a difficult one because of all the years I've been doing this. It's really never easy to fully encompass, to fully practice, to fully embody this. I have been on this path and have been wrestling with this concept for years. And today, Ryan, I want to make sure this is on the screen. I want to...
You have some good stuff on right now.
Okay, so thank you. And I want to talk about finally forgiving. Not just finally, but finally. Like it's over. I'm forgiving, right? Both meanings, finally. Because I think as a community, as a society, as a world, we give a lot of lip service to this, and there's lots of sayings and endless quotes about forgiveness, but very little practice of it, and very little acknowledgement of what it takes to do it. And I think that starts, for me at least, in like the definition of it is so incredibly unhelpful. I looked it up, right? The definition of forgiveness is to cease to feel resentment. Ender. Oh, that's it? Just to cease to feel resentment? Is that all? Okay. Done. Can I put a check mark next to that? Right? There's an action involved in it. It's a transitive verb. It's not an event. It's a transitive verb, right? And so to forgive means a process. It means an action. It means something that you are engaged and involved in. And to give up resentment or claim of requital. That's the hard one, right? Because we always think we're owed something, owed an apology, owed them to acknowledge what they did, an understanding we need to overcome, and then I can forgive. When forgiveness has nothing at all to do with that. So the definition and what we learn about it in our life and in our society doesn't help us to actually do it. So I've read every forgiveness book I can get my hands on. One of my favorites, and we've talked about it before, is Desmond Tutu's, because he lived it in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And he and his daughter wrote a book about how to forgive and laid it out into 4 steps. So here are the 4 steps. We've often talked about them. Tell your story. And that may seem antithetical to actually forgiving. But until you tell your story, you can't own it enough to let it go. And the second step of that is to name the hurt. It's not just enough to say what the other person did. You have to understand what it took from you or how it hurt you in some way. Because then you can clearly and purposefully give forgiveness. To give for what the word says. To give peace, to give love, to give compassion, to give understanding in the place of anger and resentment. I'm going to go back to step number 1. Because it doesn't say to tell your story over and over and over again. How many of us telling stories from when we were children and what our parents did to us and and what our ex did to us and and what our boss did to us and and excuse me, I have to go now. Right? So tell your story, name the hurt, and then let it go. And then let it go. And that's the hard part, right, folks? That's the hard part, the letting it go, because we're still find ourselves, how many layers does this onion have? I know with some people that are really deeply embedded in my life, family members, that I can get triggered and that old feeling comes up and going, I thought I forgave this. But here it is again. Come full circle for me today, right? Boom, right in my face. And what it is, what I've discovered on my journey in this, is that I'm expecting my forgiveness to change them. Right? I've been so magnanimous and forgiving. Why the hell haven't you changed? And so there's an expectation still. I'm still looking for that requital from the previous slide. I'm still expecting something on the outside to be different. And so therefore, here's the key, I'm still chained to them. I'm still chained to their behavior, their attitude, and their seeming lack of forgiveness or shifting, their lack of acknowledging what I think the facts are, right? What I are. The last is to release or renew the relationship. And that's really difficult, folks. But sometimes people are in your life for a reason, sometimes for a season, and sometimes it's just meant to be let go. Because they're no longer, the relationship is no longer fostering your spiritual development. The situation no longer suits where you want to go. And that doesn't make them bad or wrong. It just means the relationship has fulfilled its purpose. So the X is an X for a reason, right? And the X or the former employer are gone so that you can soar, so that you can be flying, soaring beyond the previous limitations. But when we hold on to the resentment, when we hold on to the anger and the self-righteousness, we are chaining ourselves to a past that we say we don't want, that we say was bad and not for us. And yet we keep bringing our own psychic energy right back to that spot and claiming something is good for us in it. If they would only, if they would only, if they would only. What if we could practice radical forgiveness, radical love, so that we could bless everyone exactly where they are, knowing that they're not doing it to us, they're just doing it, and we're making it about us. Oh. I tell this story, and I wrote about it, because my teenage son, he is no longer a teenager, Toby's 24 now, just turned 24, right? But when he was a teenager living in the house, I kept thinking, what is he doing this to me for? Why is he making this so difficult? Those of you who've had teenagers know this, right? And in a moment of clarity, I got that if I had had his life, if I had been given up by my parents and dropped off in foster care at 8 years old and gone through 20 different foster care families before I found my forever family, I might be making the same choices. I might be doing the exact same things, right? Because it had worked for him in those 8 years in foster care. And I was making it about me. He wasn't the egomaniac, I was. I was the one who needed the forgiveness, not him. And when I realized that, the freedom of not having to expect anything from him other than what he's going to do, I was able to love. I was able to see the same exact situation with compassion, with hope, and loving someone truly loving someone does change everything. It's not just forgiving, it's loving them. There's an active part of the word forgive. Give for healing. Give for healing. Forgive. So that the situation itself changes and you're free to go about your life and being who you are. So I know we all have someone or several someones that we may need to forgive, right? But don't we also need that same forgiveness? How many here, just taking a survey and online, please let us know too in the chat, how many of here have led a life without any mistakes? Done nothing to offend anyone. Anyone? Right? Nothing that you need to be forgiven for. Okay, so if we withhold forgiveness from others, if we withhold love from others, who are we really withholding it from? Yeah, this is the master class, right? You guys know the answer, but how do we get there? How do we get there? Nelson Mandela said it this way: when I walked out the door of the gate, toward the gate that I would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave behind my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. 100% of your pain is caused by the 1% you haven't forgiven. 100% of your pain is caused by the 1% you hold on to. So I have realized recently that while it is difficult, can you hear me? Yeah. To be in relationship with some of my family members, it is my choice to stay in relationship with them, because there was love given to me in those relationships that is innumerable, and I was forgiven for countless wrongs. And that I have this stupid resentment and grudge about one aspect of their life and their behaviors. I'm the one poisoning the pool. I'm the one withholding love and then saying, isn't it awful? Ain't I right? I have to leave behind the bitterness and the hatred. And I use the word like Nelson does specifically because there are things in this life I hate. And that sounds weird to say from this position as this minister, but if I'm truthful, if I'm completely transparent, there are things that I don't like about the world. And this always comes right back around because the world is a reflection of my consciousness. The world is only mirroring what I hold. And so there are places still in my consciousness where I vehemently dislike. In other words, hate, right? And it catches in my throat to say it, but Nelson's quote made that clear for me. That if I want to walk through the gate to freedom, if I want to fly, if I want to soar, if I want to experience more than I'm experiencing right now, I have to let go of the they shoulds. They need to. That's wrongs. And love wastefully. Love totally and compassionately. Marianne Williamson says it this way: the practice of forgiveness is the most important contribution to the healing of the world. And I desperately want a better world. I desperately want A world that functions and works for everyone, where everyone is allowed to prosper and soar and be seen and acknowledged and loved, cared for. There is more than enough to go around. We live in an infinite universe, and the divine entity that I call universe, God, Spirit, is constantly showering this good upon us. So if I want an abundant life, if I want abundance in my life, abundance of love, abundance of health, abundance of good, solid relationships, abundance of work that excites me, ignites me, and makes me get up in the morning, and I have to open the door and love, to forgive every limitation on everyone else I see, because they are only a reflection of my own limitations and lack. And when I can love you, when I can love my family members, when I can love the stranger on the corner who's acting really weird, and I can celebrate their weirdness, I can celebrate and have compassion for their journey, I'm opening up the infinite field of possibility for me. For me. And Reinhold Niebuhr said it this way: forgiveness is the final form of love. When we love, we are the most powerful beings on the planet. For there is nothing that enough love will not conquer, nothing that enough love will not bridge, nothing that enough love will not shift so that infinite possibility takes place. If we could love, if we could truly love in that way, we would be the most powerful beings on the planet. But it scares us. As Marianne says too, it is not our darkness that frightens us most, it is our light. If we could be that shining example of love and light for everyone, for ourselves, all those not enoughs that we say to ourselves, not good enough, not young enough, not tall enough, not thin enough, not educated enough, not smart enough, whatever the crap is that we say, we could see our glorious enoughness. We could see our divine potential not being utilized. And then we could shift. We could open up and say, there are no mistakes. Mistakes are just the universe saying, hey, you might want to look over here. You might want to get back on track. You might want to realize that you're worth more than you're currently settling for. You might want to step forward and try this way. You might want to answer the call of your heart and step forth and be the person you know you're here to be. I know each and every one of you have that calling, because you wouldn't be sitting here in this sanctuary or watching this online, taking the time out of your day to be with us, if you didn't know that there is something more calling you than you're currently showing up as. There is something more calling upon your spirit, your divine potential that the world needs, the world longs for. And when we can finally own that and step forward in forgiveness and give love without limitation, the world will shift. The world has to open to that power, that strength. And it may feel like you're leaving something behind or leaving something on the table. But the song the music team's going to sing for us now says, a seed must go into darkness to find new life. It must go into the dark and the quiet to find new life. So I'm going to invite you to go with us into the quiet, into the darkness, and let go of that anger, that hatred, those resentments, so that we can find our new life.